Hi, welcome to Winter with the Seasons Leadership Podcast, where we celebrate this time to go deep to transform your leadership journey through actionable advice and personal stories that you can apply to improve your leadership and life today. I'm Susan Ireland, and with my co-host and co-founder of Seasons Leadership, Debbie Collard, we thank you for joining us. At Seasons Leadership, we share a vision to make excellent leadership the worldwide standard. Learn more at seasonsleadership.com.
So today we're happy to welcome Stan Gibson. Stan, welcome to the Seasons Leadership Podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome.
You're very welcome.
Stan, tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and what you are currently doing.
Well, my journey, I think you said we only have 30 minutes, so I'll try to make this the short version. But I was in the corporate world for over, for 40 years. And both of that was working in large corporations and also as an entrepreneur. And so, I tell you what, real estate was my jam. That was my thing. That's what I did. I was in corporate real estate. In fact, for the last 13 years, oversaw the real estate strategy for Wells Fargo globally, and left that gig about 3 years ago because I finally got to do what I think God designed me to do, and that's have fun as a keynote speaker, work with small, medium-sized companies, and do executive coaching, do consulting, and do just what I enjoy most. So, that's a little bit about me. It's funny. One of the things people ask me, when did you start doing what you're doing? And I would say that's a great question because, even though I left the corporate world about 3 years ago, in some ways I left about 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, it's one of those things you start to know when you have a passion for something. And I started doing all the research on neuroscience and all the physiological biohacks around the body and sleep and nutrition and all the things that leaders need to, we're all burned out. And how do you regain it? How do I work with clients in that aspect? And then I started working on the leadership aspect. And, what have I gained over 40 years in the way of, funny, if you've been around long enough, you kind of see it enough to where when somebody asks you a question, you just kind of just intuitively know. And so I wrote a book about 3 or 4 years ago during the pandemic. Never let a good pandemic go to waste. I had a little bit more time on my hands. And so I finally wrote a book called Living a Rich and Intentional Life and just put all of it together in a book. I had been coaching clients before and after work. I've been doing keynote speaking, motivational speaking for about 10 years. And it was just time to take that act and put it into stangibsonspeaks.com. And so I haven't worked a day in 3 years because I'm doing exactly what I love.
We can absolutely relate to that. Stan, you've mentioned leadership in several ways here. So I'm curious, how do you define leadership?
Well, everybody's got their definition. And to me, in fact, I'm on a board for a company that does artificial intelligence. And I was just having a conversation with them this morning. And I just said, as far as IQ, that's really, the playing field's leveling out with AI. I mean, number one, we're all pretty smart or we wouldn't be in our position in the first place. Number two, we have just a few buttons we need to click and we can get on ChatGPT, and we can basically unearth reams of information. So the IQ is really leveling out, but the EQ, the soft skills, the social skills, the ability, to influence, the ability to work around conflict, the ability to, come into a company and be able to relate, listen, coach. I have a saying that, when leaders learn to coach, employees learn to lead. Mm-hmm. And that's really important because, so many leaders, they get in their position because, hey, they're really good at what they do. So people come to them with questions. And with those questions, they answer them and everybody's on their way. Well, that's not leading. That's telling. Mm-hmm. And so the better leaders are the ones that learn how to listen. They learn how to say, well, what if? Have you thought about? Can you give me 2 or 3 situations that would maybe solve this problem? And when you start to do that and you start to enable or you quit enabling, is when all of a sudden you start to see employees start to lead. So that's an exciting thing for me, is working with leaders and how to engage their employees, how to coach, how to listen better, how to reframe. It's amazing. It's magic when they start to do it, and they're happier too, because then they start to watch transformation in the people in the organization.
Yeah. Stan, I want to ask you more about that because I get it. I get exactly what you're saying, and it's really important. When leaders are in the position of leading a business or an organization, though, they feel a lot of stress usually. There's a lot of pressure to move fast, to deliver results, to be better than, than the other person, to win, basically. And so what you're describing in leading is being more of a coach is great. I'm all for it, but it's super hard because it feels like you're slowing down. And, you're teaching and you're letting people make mistakes, and that's really risky for leaders, or at least they feel like it's risky. How do you deal with that?
Well, you bring up a good point, because there's no magic, there's no pill you take and it just sort of starts to happen. I will tell you, we're talking about really two different situations. When you're in a corporate company and you've got 90-day profits, you do feel the pressure. You feel a lot of pressure. But fortunately, you're in a big enough organization where you can start to delegate, and I think you really got the upper hand in being able to I don't want to say push things off, but be able to delegate and be able to coach a little bit more. When you're in a small to mid-sized company, say 20 million in revenue or under, you can't hide. I mean, you've got to churn and burn. You got a lot of things on your plate. So until you start working on the business versus in the business, and trust me, when you're in a small company, you're burning, you're working in the business. And so getting these leaders to carve out time to start to say, you know what, and we've heard it before, you got to work on the business, not in the business. But I can't tell you how critical that is. Because when you start to carve out that time, okay, so what's the best time of the week to do that? Everybody's different. You've got a green, yellow, red day. You've got a green, yellow, red week. There are certain times you're in green. We're going to pick out, when is the best time for you to sit and kind of just, for me, it was Saturday. It wasn't one of the work days. It was a day I could get up, have coffee before the family got up. I could sit there and I could look at what's happened in the past week. I can look forward what's going to go on in the next month. I could take a look at what the quarterly or annual goals are. I could spend an hour and just think with no pressure, nobody, climbing me for, we got to do this, we got to get to a meeting. So I think that's one of the elements is you mentioned it. How do we slow down? And I think you've got to find that time, not during the hustle and bustle of the week, but when are you in green mode? And a lot of times for a lot of people, that's in the morning. That's when we wake up. I can get into all the neuroscience around, why that's probably the more optimal time. But hopefully that answered your question. But it definitely does matter whether you're in a corporate 90 days for earnings, or whether you've got a small mid-sized company, because that's a different work environment on both of those for both those aspects.
So Stan, I want to add on to that question, or continue this conversation a little bit more, because as we were talking before, well-being is so important to leaders. And I'm curious about this comment about a yellow day or a red day or a green day. I too have been fascinated by the neuroscience around how everything affects us. But leaders, how do they figure out what a red day or a green day or a yellow day looks like for them?
Yeah.
Tell us more about this concept.
So, a lot of it is, again, the book that I wrote was, leading with intention. And intention is the key word here. You've got to have intention around your day, your week, your month. And so when I work with clients, like I'm working with a company right now to Chicago, and one of the things, working with that leader on is, first of all, let's figure out, what your week looks like. For me, and now this is for me, and I realize that my job might be different than theirs. But I will tell you, Mondays are typically days where I just don't schedule meetings. Mondays are days that I'm working on the business, not in the business. I'm writing content. I do a lot of, I have newsletters that go out. I have, blogs and information and just massive amounts of writing that I need to do without interruption. That's my Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm working with clients. Thursday up until noon. And then Thursday afternoon, so you can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm blocking out days depending. so that I can have a mindset and an intentionality around each day.
Mm-hmm.
And then within each of those days, then there's a green, yellow, red within those days. And for me, my green is going to be in the morning. And I will tell you that when we wake up, we have the highest amount of cortisol in our body that we're going to have all day. And cortisol is fear. So we actually wake up scared of the day. We are actually in a position where we are most fearful. So one of the things I do is I have, and I really work hard with clients on morning routines and evening routines, because we want to lower that cortisol. And we want to get our body primed and be in green for the next 3 hours where we are wiring and firing. And I'll go into some of those routines because eventually we're going to kind of start to hit a lull in the middle of the day, and then we're kind of in yellow. What kind of task would you do during a yellow period? It might be emails. It might be certain things that are not as high priority. And then you're going to hit a red. And for some people, that red means that that's when they go work out because it's mindless and it rejuvenates them. For me, it's first thing in the morning, because what exercise does is it hits on a lot of different neurotransmitters in the brain. Dopamine, serotonin. It hits on obviously lowering cortisol. There's something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, and that's kind of like it rinses all the stress out of your body. And so you can only imagine when you start to work out and you start to get your heart rate up and you start to have your brain, replenish itself and get ready for the day, you're in green mode for the next 4 to 5 hours. So that's why I have a morning routine. And I really advise, I've got a client that I was working with, and we just started working together. And she was just burning the candle at both ends. She worked for a corporate, Fortune 250. She had global responsibilities. And she was gassed. She just had nothing in the tank. And I said, well, tell me about your morning. Well, I get up really early. I get up like, 4:30 or 5 because I've got, stuff going on in, Asia, whatever. Okay, what do you do? She goes, well, first thing is I turn on the TV. Well, she watches the news and she lives in Chicago. And there's killings, there's this, okay, so what more do you want to pollute your mind with than watching the news first thing in the morning? Second thing she does is starts to open emails. Okay, so now you've got a lot of things that were on your mind yesterday, today, tomorrow, and now we make 35,000 decisions a day. We just do. We make on the average 35,000 decisions a day. If you're already making about 8,000 of them before you even go to work, you don't have a chance after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm trying to get this executive prepared where we can hit the road running, because after she was doing that, getting ready for work, going down, I've got to have my donut, my coffee. I love my donut, my coffee. Well, you're going to crash and burn about two hours later. So what do you do? So when you get up, it's a nit. It's something you hear a lot of people that do what I do say. I make the bed because you know what? Hey, I got one check mark off. I'm starting off the day where the bed's made. Second thing I do is I go and I replenish my body with water, and I put a little lemon in it because it's got electrolytes. And you have went for literally 10 to 12 hours without any kind of fluids, so you're dehydrated, and your body operates off of over 80 to 85% fluids. Your brain, your joints, everything. So next thing is I get that fluid. Then after that, the coffee does come. Yeah, that's going to be that's got to be one of the most important things, at least for me. But then I'll get in a workout. And then I also, after I get the workout or while I'm doing the workout, I listen to a book. I listen to a podcast. Because I have a big belief that I tackle mind, body, and soul before I start my day. Mind, body, and soul. So I'm really focused on that. And I do some faith-based work, before I start the day too. To give you a little bit of a story on this, and by the way, the client, when she started doing this, her life changed. Her life absolutely changed. And she had, more energy. We started talking about, we definitely changed her nutritional diet. We got her, I introduced her to fasting and how that works from a neuroscience perspective and how it gives you energy. But it's phenomenal that once you do this, how your energy changes. And how you can, I always call it, you need to be a little selfish to be very selfless. You need to take care of you so that you can take care of everybody else. I had a firsthand experience on this about 5 years ago. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, and so it was stage 4, and it was pretty severe at the time. And you know, it was one of those things that you're in shock, disbelief. You don't know, what you're going to do. You get a lot of tears, and you start thinking about your future and what's around the corner. And I thought of my own advice. You got to be selfish to be selfless. So, it even gave me more motivation. And I'm not advocating everybody get up at 5 or 5:30. It just so happened that I had to do that. I had to get up early, go through this tremendous workout, meditate and pray. I had to take care of me because I knew that I was going to be taking care of her first and foremost. I still had a real estate portfolio of about $1.5 billion that I had a team leading across the globe. I had other commitments that, we all sign up for in life, but I had to take care of me. And so I have really strict morning routines. And fortunately, she got better, and, we still come, it's still going to be a lifetime of 90-day visits. And, but the thing is, it made me realize I need to take my own medicine. I need to be very selfish, because the world will go on with or without any of the three of us here. But while we're here, we need to take care of a lot of people. So we got to take care of us.
Yeah.
And that includes nighttime routines. So I even coached this client, all my clients, quite honestly, on nighttime routines. And that, no food, no alcohol, 3 hours before bed. I can tell you what it does to the body, what it does to the brain, how, wine, as much as we all love it, if you're going to drink a glass, then drink a glass of water. You've got to dilute it, or, it'll interrupt your sleep patterns. So, there's certain things that I tell people not to do 3 hours, before going to bed, 2 hours before, I tell them, typically that's the time you've got to start shutting down the work. If you're still checking your email, if you're still doing whatever, trust me, that's going to stay with you for the next 6 to 8 hours. You've got to shut it down. And then that hour before bed, you've got to introduce melatonin into your body. And it can be natural melatonin just by dimming the lights. It can be a shot of melatonin, 3 to 5 milligrams. But whatever it is, you've got to have intention before you go to bed in order to get a sound 7 to 8 hours of sleep, with the 4 cycles of sleep that people are supposed to get up in the morning and be selfish. And so you can be selfless and tackle on the next day.
That's
long
great.
answer. Right there you go.
Yeah, no, it's very motivating. And I really like the idea of the green, yellow, red. I think, and the time blocking, but and I think our listeners would really be able to use that as a tool. But it might only be me, but I'm a little bit confused. So do the colors relate to the level of cortisol you have? So you wake up and it's green or red? I'm like, what does it mean? Like, is it
Great
red?
question. Great question. Now like I say, the cortisol, we're in red and wake up. But I really believe that we've got more energy if we do things right. Green relates to energy. Green relates to, I have energy. Yellow is when we start to kind of, throttle down. We're on about, 50 to 60% energy. Red is typically we're getting gassed. I wear all kinds of wearables, and I wear a Garmin that has a body battery on it. And it will tell me, where I am, kind of green, yellow, red as well. And so I do know that most mornings is when I have energy. That's when I'm going to tackle the absolute hardest, the toughest projects. That's when I can focus, I can concentrate. It's when I do a lot of my writing. It's when I love to coach my clients. I love to do consulting. I'm just wiring and firing, and so are a lot of my clients. Green mornings are typically, most individuals have most energy in the morning. Some of them are a little different. They're night owls. They really kind of kick in later in the afternoon and in the evening. So there's a process of looking at, what task do you do during the day, and when does it hit your dopamine most? Dopamine's that energy. It's that neurotransmitter in the brain. When do you start to get energy, and from what task? And when you can start to kind of diary or journal that out is when you start to say, you know what, I really do. I've got more energy during 9 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning. I do start to kind of hit a lull around noontime, noon to 2, noon to 3. And so I probably need to make sure that my tasks are different during that noon to 3. And, after that, I'm really it's probably best I just do emails, or I do something that's a little more mindless and something that, I call them the pebbles versus the big rocks. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's a little bit of, it's more of an energy drive around the day as it progresses. And then really you can even equate it to the week, because again, Monday, we're just coming off 2 days rest. We should have a lot of energy Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday, we're starting to probably, we're starting to taper down a little bit. And Friday, I really try to keep my Friday as open as possible for relationship building. The way I'm wired is I'm very relational, and relationships stoke a lot of dopamine, a lot of serotonin. And so Friday's a great day for me to rev up that dopamine and serotonin. So I try to meet with a lot of people. I have calendar invites out to people that want to meet with me, and I have those scheduled for Friday. And in fact, as a small to medium-sized business owner, that's one of the things that I'm very intentional with my calendar, because I have 5 to 6 meeting invites I will give people. Some of them, nobody meets with me on Monday. You're one of the exceptions. We're doing this on Monday, and there was a certain set of circumstances that we're doing this. But typically, none of my meeting calendar invites have Monday, because that's my day to focus, write, and get as much content done as possible. For all my clients, typically those meeting invites are going to be Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those are going to be their options. And then, for people like my accountants, my marketing team, a lot of other people, Thursday is going to be that day, and then Friday's going to be a day that I set aside for basically relationship building. So I'm fortunate in what I do. I can day stack appropriately. If you're in the corporate world, you can't always do that. But I will tell you, one time when I was I had a department. I had just come in, and there was about 150 people in the department that I was overseeing, and I immediately made Friday no meeting day, and I could have ran for mayor and won. It was probably the best thing I think I did, because we were just meeting by death, and you know what that's like. You've been in that environment. When I said it's no meeting day, and unless it's one of the people we're serving or a client that absolutely have to meet on Friday, we're getting stuff done on Friday. We're going into the weekend, and we're going to be caught up. We're going to be, we're going to use those for recovery days, and then we're going to hit Monday hard at it. So anyway, very important that you're very intentional about your calendar and your time.
Yeah.
Stan, you've had a long career up to this point. At what point and how did you learn these things that you use now?
Oh my gosh. Boy, that's the best question I think I've had in a while, because I've got to think of, it's one of those things when somebody asks you something, like I'll have a client ask me something, and it's like, I was in that situation back, when I worked at XYZ. And, a lot of my clients, I've got a manager, they don't get me this. Well, you know what? I've had that manager that didn't get me. I've had that narcissist, in my life. I know what that's like to go home and to be frustrated. I know what that's like to see a dead end street. And so I can pull back on that. And I can say, you know what? I have some empathy because I was there. I know what you're going through. Let's talk about it. And I'll tell you what happened to me. And then I can kind of go into that, and it kind of gives them hope. But one of the things that I do every time we kick off, working with a client, I believe so strongly that self-awareness, and even with the team awareness, is absolutely critical. I cannot tell you. Now I have 2 processes that I use. One is, of course, most are familiar with StrengthsFinders.
Mm-hmm.
And StrengthsFinders is something where, for your listeners that maybe don't, but there's 34 attributes, and you wake up with 5, and they are your 5. You do them better than they're a combination of those 5 that you're the Michael Phelps of that swim lane. I mean, you can win. It's not even a fair fight, because you are the fastest person in that swim lane. So we're going to use this, but then I use another process that is a bolt-on to StrengthsFinders called the Genius Spark. And that's where we take those 5 strengths and we go through a series of questions. It only takes 15 to 20 minutes, but we can take each of those strengths and build out a very specific sentence that identifies with you and that strength. So for example, one of my strengths is strategic. That just means that I just filter quickly and get to the end result, and doesn't mean I've got the right result. It just means I filter quickly. You might have strategic. And if you have strategic, your strategic might look different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 8 different choices as to what your strategic looks like versus mine. And when you build this out over each of the strengths, over the 5 strengths, you now have 5 sentences. You now have a paragraph. You have a paragraph of when you're the best version of you. Again, it's almost an unfair fight. And then we go through the same thing. If you know, when you look at strengths, when you're under stress and under pressure, those very strengths, like that strategic, it becomes kryptonite. It becomes a weakness if you don't take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So we do the same process. We now have a paragraph of when you're at your best, and we have a paragraph of you with that kryptonite. Mm-hmm. And now we have things to, it's just that self-awareness. I'm working with a team right now, a global team, and we're meeting next week, going through this process. And this self-awareness where they can all sit there and say, oh my goodness, yeah, that's Debbie at her best. I can see that now. I know why, she's so good at that. And then, eventually we'll get to that kryptonite piece, and, that'll be a little more, of a little bit more tension in that conversation. But when you know what that kryptonite looks like in somebody else, you say, not malicious. Now I get it. I know why they're showing up that way. It's just that 10 to 15% of the time that they're under stress. And at least I know, I don't take it personal. So when we start to work on self-awareness, and I do throw the Enneagram into it with certain clients, because I think that covers some areas of fear and things that these StrengthsFinders doesn't. But when you start to look at that self-awareness and team awareness, then you can start to have conflict, healthy conflict. You can start to realize that nothing is malicious, nothing, it's a conversation. So that's a big thing that I believe about individuals and teams, is having self-awareness. And I will tell you this right now, even for my wife and I, we're coming up on 42 years of marriage, believe it or not. And, I wish we would have taken this back when we first got married. Oh my goodness, all the fights and the nights on the couch and everything. I tell you what, I would have, it was what I didn't realize, because one of hers is developer. That's one of the strengths, because she's known as Saint Sharon because she helps everybody. She just has this magic that just everybody walks away better after a conversation with her. Well, when you're married and you're having that conversation, it comes across a little different. And so you start to, put your defenses up. Well, once I realized that, it was like, Stan, she's helping you, not being critical. And one of my other strengths is activator. I've always got to be moving. And once she knew that, she could just call it out and say, Stan, maybe not tonight. Let's not go out. Let's just sit back and let's chill. But once you have and you're armed with that information, it's a beautiful world, especially on teams. And so that's I love growth and transformation. I love to see teams just, come together. And I think self and team awareness is one of the key ways they do it.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're getting to the end of our chat here, and I really enjoyed it. Is there anything we have missed asking you that is key?
I really believe that, for a lot of leaders, again, I think it's that emotional intelligence. I think that that's something that, we all work on, the hard skills, but we've got to get better at the soft skills. I do think the wellness and energy and well-being, I think that that's the second piece of the stool. And then the third piece is the systems. It isn't just knowing whether you're in green, yellow, and red, but it's also, it's knowing what are the tools out there, what are the systems. Should the team be on Slack? Should the team be using Notion? Should they be using Trello? What is the most efficient way for us to have asynchronous type meetings where we're not in meetings all the time? What is the best way for us to be communicating, and we all don't have to be in a meeting, so we can be getting things done or looking at the results of the meeting at a time when we have time to focus on it versus using that time for something else. So I think that that's the one thing. I'm having and probably when this airs, it'll already be out, but I'm doing a master class at the end of March. And I'm going to start doing several of these because I really believe that these are the traits that leaders are looking for these days. And I have a real soft spot in my heart with emerging leaders, because you asked me, when did I realize I knew a lot of this stuff? I am embarrassed at a lot of the things I did back in my 30s and 40s. And I wish I would have had somebody there to equip me with some of this information. So I love working with, in fact, I'm working tomorrow with a Gen Z who's open and honest. And, I learn as much from him as he does from me. And he's a young man from Poland that he absorbs all of this. And so anyway, that's enough for me, but I love just watching people grow and transform. And I just can't thank you too enough for what you do in helping, your listeners and bringing me on board to share what little I do know.
Right.
Well, thank you for being here with us today. And one last question before we let you go today. And this has been amazing. I think the listeners have gotten tons of actionable advice in a short amount of time, which we love giving them. One last question for you. How can people find you?
Oh, thank you. So if you just go either email me at stan@stangibsonspeaks.com, or just go to my website, stangibsonspeaks.com. And if you do go to my website, and I wish you would, I do have a giveaway of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People-Centric Leaders. And so please look there. I've also got a page that shows you, a lot of my blogs, a lot of my newsletter, which has blown me away at the response that I've had from the subscribers. It's got an extremely high open rate, and I've had most people tell me it's the one thing they do open out of the week, because I touch on leadership, well-being, and what's something I'm listening, whether or reading or a documentary. And it's a very quick 3-minute read, and so it's kind of blowing me away, and it's put the pressure on me to keep doing it now.
Very great.
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 Thank you so much, Stan.
Thank you. And that information will be in our show notes too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. We hope that you were inspired by this conversation.
And we invite you to join our community on Patreon. See the link below. There you will find more resources to help you on your leadership journey.
Make sure to join us next time for more conversation about leadership excellence.